Sometimes I'm amazed that we survived childhood. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. In this episode, we have a story. It's a little different than the other stories that I have told here. This is not a fictional story from the Bobby series. This is a real story. And as I tell all stories, I tell them to you as an adult. These are not children's stories. They may be about children, but our perspective in all our stories is the perspective of an adult watching the story unfold. So this story dates back many years, and this story is about me. It's about me when I was 11 or perhaps 12 years old. I was a Boy Scout. Now, I'm not Craig in the Bobby series, and Craig is not fashioned after me. No, we're completely different. I'm a real human being, and Craig is a fictional character. But I was a Boy Scout, and at about age 11 or 12 in Boy Scouts, I had a hatchet. The hatchet looked similar to this. This is not the hatchet. This hatchet is a weird hatchet. It has a wonderful head made of wonderful steel. It's made in Sweden, and it's got this terrible handle. This is not what I had when I was 11 or 12 as a Boy Scout. I had a Boy Scout hatchet, and on the handle it said Boy Scouts of America. It was sold under license of the Boy Scouts. It was also not this good. The handle was better than this, but the head wasn't anywhere near this good. Now, in a future video, we're going to replace this handle. I foreshadow we will replace this handle because I don't like it. But let's get back to our story. So I had a hatchet, but I was not really very familiar with hatchets, and I had received no instruction on how to be safe with a hatchet. I think it was assumed that I would not do anything stupid. It was quite an assumption, however. So I was in the yard. It was a summer day, and I was in the yard, and there were some logs from fallen trees that were being cut up into firewood for the fireplace. And there was this one log, perhaps 8 or 10 inches in diameter, that subsequently was cut up into firewood and burned in the fireplace. But on that day, it was an intact log, and I, as a young Boy Scout, armed with my hatchet, decided to do some hatchet work on this log. And so I set upon the log with my hatchet and took a few strokes, but I wasn't real familiar with the techniques. So I was just hacking away at this log, and something happened. I was toward the end of the log, and the blade hit it, but it actually missed and deflected and continued in its path into my ankle. So at that point, I had a hatchet in my hand. I had some pain in my ankle. I was not really certain what had happened. Things were not real clear, but I could tell at that point things were not good. So I pulled up the pant leg of my pants, and there was a cut. And it was nearly an inch long. And I could see things that I didn't want to see. I could see the fat under the skin and some blood that started coming. And this was really bad for a young Boy Scout who just cut his leg with a hatchet. So The other kids in the family summoned help, and I was taken into the house, and it was cleaned. I didn't enjoy that. Soap and water on a fresh cut, not what I had in mind. I just wanted it to go away. I didn't want to have a cut on my leg. The decision by parents was made that we would go to the hospital, to the emergency room, to have this cut dealt with professionally. I didn't know enough about emergency rooms to fear them or not fear them. They were just a big question mark. I wasn't sure what we were up to, but we went to the emergency room. And what I remember is that they got us into the exam room super quickly and that they were really nice. I was surprised. And I was reassured that they weren't going to hurt me. For an 11-year-old, that's the kind of reassurance you want. So they had me lay down on the table, and the doctor was down at the foot of the table, and he was doing things that were not within my view. Now, as an adult, I know what he was doing. He was cleaning the area around the cut with antiseptic, and he was putting a local anesthetic around the cut. We now know that because adults know that sort of thing. And so he numbed up the skin around the cut, and he looked at it. And he reassured my parents, who were standing right next to me, that this was going to be okay. This wasn't going to be a big problem, and it just needed a couple of stitches. Now, the only thing I could feel was the vibration of things touching my leg, but I couldn't feel anything sharp or painful. And every now and then he would move my foot into a better position so that he could put the sutures in. And he put 3 sutures in the skin to close the cut. He put a dressing on it and sent me home. After having stitches in my ankle, I didn't have much pain. It was pretty cool. And within about 10 days, I went in and had the stitches removed, and that was super easy. So I learned from this experience a bunch of things. First of all, hatchets have a very sharp edge, and we need to be very careful with them. Another thing I learned is that there are more ways to use a hatchet incorrectly than there are to use it properly. So, as a Boy Scout, I learned a lot more about how to use a hatchet as a tool to cut things safely. I learned to not swing the hatchet toward any part of my own body. If I was holding an object and I wanted to cut it, I would make sure that my hand was far away from where that hatchet blade is going to impact. I also learned that getting stitches is not that big a deal. Nobody wants stitches, but done properly, they're not painful, they're not an ordeal, and they certainly help that cut heal up promptly. So that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I invite your comments below. Maybe you had stitches when you were a young kid. Maybe you would share your experiences. Of course, we would like you to subscribe and like the video. That helps us build the channel, and that's very helpful. And I hope you join us in future videos. See you soon.